Thank you. Welcome to our February EDAP meeting. Time's flying in 2026. Let's start with the minutes. Did anybody have any questions, comments on the minutes? Okay, will somebody make a motion to approve them? Ken, I think you
Second.
need to, your audio's off, Ken.
Yes, I move to approve the minutes.
Okay, someone second?
I second.
Okay, Marilyn,
Yes.
George,
Yes.
Derek.
I abstain. I was not at the meeting.
Okay, Tom,
Yes.
Lily,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes,
Alan,
I was not at the January meeting.
so are you abstaining?
Yeah.
Okay, and I vote yes. And the first item on our agenda is the comp plan presentation and discussion. Who's introducing that? Is it Sandy or Jessica, or is Jake gonna?
Jake is online.
Yeah, I see him.
So for our comp plan presentation, it'll be given by my coworker, Jake Collins, who is a planner in the planning department. He's been working on the comp plan very diligently for the past year and a half or so, I believe is how long it's been going on for so far. So he's going to join us today to talk a little bit about the public engagement phase that'll be kicking off in a couple of weeks.
Welcome, Jake.
Oh, thank you. And believe it or not, Jess, it's actually starting today, so great timing. Thank you all for having me tonight. I am going to share my screen. I have a very, very brief presentation, and then I am happy to answer any questions you may have after. So as Jess mentioned, we are now just over a year and a half into the comprehensive planning process, and it has been a wild ride. We've had a really, really great time doing this work, and we've learned a lot through the process. So we're at the point where we need to hear from you. Before I talk about where we're headed, I want to talk about what we've done. And I understand this is a text-heavy slide. I will not go through line by line, but a quick reminder for those of you who may not be familiar with the comp plan, it will set a 15-year vision and land use roadmap for the town. It will develop policies and provide direction to town employees, provide a framework to guide future zoning changes. Zoning changes are not included in part of this document, and will act as a reference for the town when prioritizing future investment, which of course is the top of mind for everyone at this time. I'm sure you're all wondering, since we've been at it for a year and a half, when do we plan on ending? We anticipate the plan will be completed in July 2026, and then we will send it to the state after. I will share this presentation with Jess after, and she can send it along to you if you want to look at it closer or have any questions on what we've accomplished over the past year and a half. So this is not our first engagement phase. In fall of 2024, we went out for visioning engagement. So visioning was really, what do we want for the town? Like, could be pie in the sky dreams. Anything we really wanted, we accepted. So we held workshops. We had a table at Brookline Day. I met people on the street of the farmers market. And overall, we collected just under 11,000 comments, which was pretty remarkable about what people hope for the future of Brookline. From that, we were able to kind of define six plan themes, and then each plan theme has subtopics. So of most relevance to you, of course, is number 2, thriving commercial areas. We really wanted there to be something for everyone. We wanted to make sure that it was a holistic plan that really looks at the town as a whole while not neglecting the individual areas. So now we're coming up on our winter 2026 engagement, which is actually kicking off today. I just received the survey link about 25 minutes ago, which is very exciting. It will run from today through March 2nd. So it's about 4 weeks, and we're hoping to receive a lot of feedback during that time. So you may be wondering why we're doing engagement now. The feedback we will receive will inform the plan's goals, recommendations, and strategies. We're at the point where we're beginning to really want to draft the plan and, think strategically and, put pen to paper and see where this goes. Secondly, we have a wide array of expertise on the steering committee, but we need to hear from those it impacts. There's no going around that. Just because it looks good on paper doesn't necessarily mean it will work for everyone. And the third is it will strengthen our partnerships between the town and its residents for future initiatives. As I mentioned earlier, zoning reform is not included in the comp plan, but you never know. In a year or two, a proposal may come before all of us, and we may be able to relate it back to the comp plan, or hopefully we'll be able to, and say, this is what the public wants, or this is how we think we should approach this. So we actually have a lot for you to do during this engagement phase, so much that it actually cut off the title of the slide. So we need you to comment on a vision statement, share your priorities across all the plan themes, provide opinion on housing and commercial growth, and indicate the types of housing you prefer and where you'd like to see them constructed. So I've kind of keyed them into the activities on the right. If you take the survey or attend a workshop, which I will get to in a moment, you will see them large scale. You'll be able to engage with them. We have created many boards that kind of are meant to inform those who live in Brookline and kind of give them their own expertise to answer all the questions that we are asking. So with that, there are several ways to get involved. First is the one I would recommend is joining us in person at Town Hall on February 9th, which is about a week from today, 7 to 9. It's a drop-in. Our consultant team will be there, project staff, steering committee members, and it's a really great opportunity to review these boards that I've discussed and say, where did this come from? How did you reach this conclusion? What am I taking away from this? And just, ask any follow-up questions that maybe you've had in the back of your head for the past 18 months or so. It's also great because we're hoping that people will connect there in person, whether you agree with your neighbor or disagree, when you come together, hopefully you can have a respectful conversation. The second way is to host a meeting in a box. So what that basically entails is we provide you with everything, a script, the paperwork, a way to provide feedback, and you take it to your neighborhood, to your community group, to your interest group, and you fill it out as a team. You can provide really great focused feedback through this. And we also have a few bonus questions to really kind of reach the heart of your needs. That's really the only way we can get at these questions. So if you have a strong community or people you think might want to engage, it would be a great opportunity for you. And last, of course, is take the online survey. Easy enough. Please share it with friends. It's going out tomorrow. Although it's posted now. And that's about it. If you can't contribute at this time, don't worry, we will be coming back to you. So as I mentioned before, we will use the feedback we received to help inform the draft plan recommendations and strategies. And we understand that you guys have expertise in your respective areas, and we want to make sure that A, you're able to share that with us, and B, it just aligns with your goals. So beginning in March, once the engagement phase closes, the consultant team will start integrating past plans, everything that the Economic Development Division has given us over the past, I don't even know now, 10 years, they've reviewed, and kind of synthesize that with the feedback we receive. They'll prepare everything. The second to last step is we're going to bring it back to you. We want to hear what you think about it, whether or not it aligns with your priorities, whether you see something that we missed. And then, wrap it up and send it off to the draft plan. So that concludes my presentation. I will send this, as I mentioned, I will send this to Jess. It will also have links to the survey, to our website, as well as a website where all of the previous meeting recordings and slide decks are hosted. Thank you all for your time.
Thanks, Jake. Derek had something in the chat, whether there's any additional training required or recommended for the meeting in a box sessions.
That's kind of the beauty of the meeting in a box. There really isn't any training required. We will provide you with a script, with the paperwork, with all the facts, and you can sit in your living room over a cup of coffee or a glass of wine with your friends and review everything together and provide feedback.
Love it.
Sounds
Great.
And
I will reach out to you, Jake, to follow up on this one. Thank you.
Absolutely.
And I do want to just briefly thank Jake for his work. He's been doing yeoman's work. I mean, this has been a masterclass in herding cats. It's the way I say it. But I guess I want to ask the members of EDAB and the public. I know that this meeting's extensively attended. That it's really important to share the link to the survey. We have the workshop that's going to happen next Monday at 7 p.m. Jake, right at Town Hall, first floor
7
Town Hall.
p.m. Yep.
And so you can do this in person, and we will get folks. And I would encourage people to come, but we certainly need to hear from a wide array of individuals across town. And the best way to do that is through the survey. So please share it with your networks. Sign up for a meeting in a box. That would be fun if you're going to get together. I think you might need something stronger than wine, but it really, and Jake and the consultants have done an excellent job with the engagement materials. And you should know, Jake didn't include a couple of the things, but the town has been essentially divided into is it 5 areas, Jake?
It is, yes.
And really, we're trying to answer the questions. Where would people like to see growth? And what type of growth would they like to see? There's housing types, there's mixed use development. We asked about economic development. We're asking about green space and transportation. These are really critical questions to be asking. Again, they're broad and they're going to be important to help us with the next phase, which is to start doing zoning reform for the town. And that will likely be done on an area by area basis. So please share the link to the survey, and Monday attend the workshop in person, even if it's just for 30 minutes to come in and hit one of the boards real quick.
Thanks, Paul. Sandy asked just on that, is there a LinkedIn or Facebook post that can be shared with a link to the survey?
Yes.
Okay.
So I am working with the town's communications director, and that is going out tomorrow. If anyone would like me to send them a direct link to it, I am happy to do so.
That's great. Thanks. And I have one question, and then I see Ken's hand up. At the very beginning, you mentioned it goes to the state for what's the approval process?
That's actually a great question. I don't know the answer to at this time.
I can. So I can
you,
answer it
Paul.
real quick. So, and historically, communities required to put in a comprehensive plan in order to get some funding. It was something that had to go through the state. It was actually submitted by the planning board, had to be signed off by the planning board, and then it was submitted to the state. And that would get you, I think, grant money. They don't do that grant anymore, but we certainly do want to send it off to the state and have the support of key boards and commissions like the planning board. Ultimately, the select board will, take feedback on it, adjust the comp plan, and then send it off to the state. But it's really going to be, it's a document for us, for all of us, to help guide, the next stage of growth. For Brookline, it really is it's our plan, not the state, but they do get a copy of it.
So they got a copy. We don't have to wait for their approval or.
No.
Okay.
Not at all.
Okay.
No way.
Thanks.
No, thank you.
So we have some questions. Ken.
So Jake, how has your committee been dealing with the challenge of integrating ongoing studies or recent studies? You think of the housing production plan that was adopted just a few years ago, and then ongoing. We have, of course, Jesslyn Hill, the Newberry College site and Center Street lots and other projects that are ongoing, either formally or in current discussions and use of consultants, et cetera. How is that all being integrated?
Paul, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, sure. Yep. So great question, Ken. So of course, we've got many great plans that have been in flight and have just been completed. And so we've been educating the committee and will incorporate many of the key objectives for some of these plans, like the housing production plan, would be considered and incorporated into the overall comprehensive plan. I made it a point, to the chagrin of some of my colleagues and others, to stay out of the active, parcel by parcel studies that are going on. So we have not been involved in the Chestnut Hill West study. We haven't commented on it. We will, and the board and the commission, the steering committee, I'll call it, the steering committee will not take it up and hold a public hearing and offer its opinion. The same for the Center Street lots. But I will say, the Center Street lots is probably a little closer because the comp plan now is going out with this engagement activity right now. We're going to ask a lot of people a lot of questions that could get at things like the Center Street lots. So that's a little, coming up to intersecting well with the comp plan. But we have not gotten involved in specific parcel studies. We would drive ourselves crazy if we tried to do that.
Thanks, Paul. Sandy.
Great. The part of the presentation I saw was great. I apologize for being a little late, so I may have missed this part. But as part of the outreach plan, I always feel like so many of the way people interact with the town is through the schools, right? In this very narrow lens. And having a kid in high school now, like when your kids are in elementary and K-8, your world is very focused, if you will. And that's a really important part of our community. So what kind of outreach specifically is being targeted to get that voice in this comp plan? And what I mean by that is the voice of the parents and the people who are interacting in our schools.
Absolutely. That's a great question. Throughout the entire process, we've had a great relationship with the schools. I'm working with them now to try to figure out if we can, use their networks to kind of spread the word. We also, this is actually very timely because I was just talking to him earlier, have a member of the steering committee who is very involved, I believe, with the Pierce School PTA, and he has offered to, share any materials and be prepared to answer any questions that they may have, kind of act as the liaison with the PTAs.
Thanks, Jake. Lily, you're up.
Just wanted to echo the thanks. I feel like, Jake, I've seen you at every point of the town out with the comp plan. I just feel like everywhere you go, you're just there again. I'm kind of curious, kind of to Sandy's point, about some of the other groups that were kind of intentionally reached out to. I'm kind of, thinking about these meetings in a box, such a cool thing to do. But I'm kind of just curious, like, have you been reaching out to like larger, like nonprofit groups that are active in the area, or like, the teen center? Has there been like an intentional outreach to some other groups that, maybe aren't necessarily represented in these kind of surveys?
Yeah, so that's also a great question. As I put in my presentation, we've had, I think, 25 comprehensive plan related meetings at this point, 3 of which were dedicated to engagement this time alone. So during, I believe it was the first meeting, we identified a list of people, of stakeholders that, may not be present in all the listservs or have a great presence in town, and tried to identify them. And to kind of do that, we went through the equity and inclusion plan that was drafted at the beginning and said, okay, here is who the consultants who are external parties identified. Here's who I know, who I've worked with, who I think might be great candidates to engage in way greater than just completing a survey. And I believe it's tomorrow, Wednesday, a blast is actually going out to all of them.
And Jake, we also held small groups, right? With
Yes.
BHA and others, where we had very small groups that, and frankly, the engagement was customized for those very small groups to help reach marginalized groups within the town, and that was very effective. And as Jake said, he's going to continue to reach out to those. We are at the point where we just need your help. We need the public's help, everybody that's attending this meeting, to just share it, right? To share the information and share it with the PTAs. PTAs can sometimes be funny about putting information into their newsletters and such. They don't want to get involved in that stuff. So I have 2 kids at Lawrence. I'll be sharing the link with the Lawrence with our Lawrence school group and ask folks to pass it around. So that's really the best way, is to pass it to your networks and encourage people that this really is about helping to set the future for our town, and we need everybody as much as possible to contribute to that.
And Sandy said, to Lily's point, the seniors in our community are also a critical voice as
Oh yeah,
multi-generational
they
lens.
are.
Have you been?
Oh yes, we have
working on that?
Betsy Pollock, who is the president of the Senior Center Foundation,
Chair of the
is a
Council on
member of the
Aging, I
steering
think.
committee.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, good.
Yeah, we're very plugged in with them.
Yes.
Okay. Anybody else have questions or comments? I don't see any.
Okay.
Okay, well, thanks so
Wait,
much,
really,
Jake.
sorry, and really quick, Paul, I think to your point, I just think, I was just thinking about the meeting in a box. I think it could also be really well framed with the PTAs as a conversation with your children, to like use that as like a family conversation of like, what do you want to see in town? So if there's kind of a push against it not being, a child and adult activity, but I just think that could be a really cool.
A great idea. Yeah.
That is, yeah.
Jake,
like that.
Jake, could you drop, if you're comfortable at this point, I think we published it, could you drop the survey link into the chat? Or
Yes.
send it to me and I'll drop it in the chat if you don't have droppable capabilities.
I do.
Okay.
Yes.
That'll be great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks so much, Jake. This is great. And I hope everybody I need participates in some way. I'm sure that most of us will. It's important.
Thank you, and thank you for your time.
Okay. Bridal path. Who's doing that? Lily?
Yes. So I had Jessica kindly sent around just an update. We've hit a little bit of a setback just because the consultant that they brought on, an issue came about with their sub-consultant who was doing the survey, which has pushed it back, it seems, significantly, since we need the survey to get done before we move to the next steps. So we kind of got an update saying kind of vaguely that we'd be starting in the spring. But I was hoping that we'd have a little bit more detail, but that's pretty much where we're at right now. We're just, again, waiting for the consultant to finish the survey before we can get to the next steps. The TIP is a long process, and there's no concern about any of the funding that we have secured for that project already going away. So obviously would love to have gotten it started sooner rather than later, but not a big concern for anyone on the town side.
Okay. But talking about the bridal path reminds me, I don't know if Meredith or Jessica or anybody knows, is the T work going ahead?
And
Paul,
I can speak
okay.
to that. I've had the pleasure, the honor of being on the working group that's working with the T. So I know more than I care to share, but I will do my best. So yes, I actually think it's good news, to tell you the truth, that maybe the bridal path is slowing down a little bit, because as the MBTAC line changes take place, some of that will need to take into account for the bridal path. So we're going to lose some parking, for instance, that may impact commercial areas, may also impact the path of the bridal path in the space. So these two things, it's good that we're getting this piece straightened out. But yes, they are marching ahead. We did the first station a couple of months ago. That went through. They're now coming with the big changes, which are, they're consolidating 4 stations down to 2, and making some significant changes that will impact the tree canopy. So I have a feeling that's either happening now or just happened. The Tree Preservation Committee is holding a public hearing. Any public shade tree that's going to be impacted by state law, you have to have a public hearing on those, and that's likely to generate an appeal to the select board. And so that'll be coming before the select board, the next week or next couple of weeks. So all of this should be wrapped up by the end of the month, frankly, unless we have a hiccup for the select board to grant the grant of location, which the T needs to move forward.
And are they still planning on starting the work this spring?
They are. You know what? They're going to be starting around the time of the marathon, believe it or not. So I had raised a little bit of concerns about that, but I think they feel confident that they can drive trains and chew gum at the same time. So hopefully that will come true. That will be true. But yes, the project is moving forward. There's 3 approvals that have to go through the tree canopy, tree preservation. The transportation board also needs to give some recommendations to the select board, and then the select board will need to give its approval for the grant of location.
Okay, thanks, Paul.
Okay.
Hadn't heard about that in a bit. Center Street lots. Meredith or Jess, who's talking about this?
I am.
One of you starting? Okay.
So we
can-
presented to select board last week. Presentation was given by Spec Dempsey and primarily our committee chair and vice chair, Mike Sandman and Jonah. The select board had a lot of questions. They postponed any vote and wanted to continue discussion tomorrow night. So we're on the agenda for tomorrow evening. They had a lot of questions on the RFI process, which over the last week, Mike Sandman and Chris Dempsey have been working diligently to try to answer some of those questions for tomorrow evening. And we are looking forward to continuing the discussion with them. And we actually already received an inquiry today from a developer who's interested in the process. They apparently have been following it since the inception, since the Center Street Lots project website has been up and running. So if we are able to move forward, we do already have some interest.
So what I'd like EDAP to do, and we can talk about it, is discuss and hopefully agree to send a letter to the select board for their meeting tomorrow night, encouraging them to vote. What the Center Street Lots Study Committee is asking for is their agreement to move forward with a request for information. And I think we talked about this last time, what it is. But basically, it is a document with all the information we have on these sites, and the report that the committee has finished with a lot of questions about how you would find it, just open-ended questions for people who may be interested. It's a request for information, not for interest from developers. And the point is, and I had never been through this process before, but found Cambridge has done it. We have, and we can send it out to everybody, a copy of a request for information that they did for 2 parking lot sites on Bishop Allen Drive in Central Square, a block behind Mass Avenue, one of which is the site that they've been using for I think it's called Starlights, where they've had a lot of entertainment and stuff in the summer. It started during COVID. And they sent out this request for information in 2024. They got 5 or 6, I think, responses back from both for-profit and nonprofit developers. And the staff compiled a long document with all of the issues that people raised for the city council to consider. I couldn't find anything after that on the website, so I asked Chris Dempsey what had happened, and he sent me an article from the Crimson, actually. Apparently, the Cambridge City Council decided to focus on a site, I don't know which site, north of Harvard Square on Mass Avenue before they did this work. It seems to me that the issue with that, or the problem with that, is that by the time they get around to this, all the information they've collected from these developers is going to be moot. Things have changed. But anyway, that's what we're trying to do. And the report does say that the preferred option is the side lot site for a whole lot of reasons, but I don't think anybody expects that whatever is built there, assuming something's built there, is going to look like the rendering that Spec Dempsey has put together for all kinds of reasons that everybody here understands. So I'd like to talk about that and see whether people are willing to vote to send a letter to the select board, encouraging them to approve moving forward with this request for information, which Meredith is estimating will cost about $40,000 in consultant time. They'll put the document together for us. And then we will have a much better idea of whether this is a feasible project, what makes it feasible, what makes it infeasible, and have the tools that we would need. The next step would be to get some zoning in place and go to town meeting. I think it's in the fall of 2027. Was that the estimate for town meeting for rezoning before we send out requests for proposals, so that for the first time in a very long time, developers would know what the town wants before we ask them for proposals. So that's the plan. And George, I see your hand up.
Yeah, I'm speaking really from my background as a developer, and I'm trying to figure out what kind of information the town is trying to generate from developers requesting information. If you got a packet on your desk and you're a developer, and Brookline is looking for information about potential development of Center Street lots, what information specifically is the town seeking that I could generate?
Mike Salmon, do you have that note, Meredith?
I can pull it up.
There's Mike Salmon just sent a note today, like a draft of what it would be. And again, personally, I learned an enormous amount about this process from the Cambridge documents, and I think we should send them out to everybody.
It just sounds very long and very attenuated, and expensive, honestly. And what are we going to get out of it? We may get a lot of information that's apples, oranges, pears, cucumbers. And I'm just wondering what you're trying to get out of this exercise in terms of information.
Well, again, here's the very first draft, I believe, that Mike Salmon has done in terms of, and I have some more information, let me find it. But what happened in Cambridge, at least as I read the documents, is it's a lot of open-ended questions so that the city, excuse me, could figure out how feasible this was and what would make it feasible or infeasible for developers. So these are the kinds of things. And we can go through them. Do you want to go through them more completely, George? We can do that.
Well, I guess, you know, for developers to feel they're going to put some effort into this and do it completely and comprehensively and usefully to the town, they're going to have to invest real time and energy and money preparing information for the town. And it's hard for developers to do this speculatively to begin with, and then not knowing whether the town's even going to put it out for development, you know, makes this kind of a difficult chase, I think, for developers.
Um,
It's
Cindy-
so speculative, and Brookline does not have a great reputation for putting out development forward planning. So if I was a developer, would I respond? I wouldn't put much work in it, that's for sure. And so that means I wouldn't really generate very useful information.
Well, I think, and I wish Chris Dempsey was on this call because he was the one who explained it all to all of us. I believe that the expectation isn't that people would spend a whole lot of time and money. You don't need to put in proposals. You need to take a look at the work that's been done and give us some idea of what else you need to know in order to think about putting together a proposal. And what
Okay.
we're trying to do is get us into a position, as I said, where we can actually tell developers, collect all this information, and it may be that at the end, everybody says this is completely infeasible, we can't do anything. And we will have learned a lot from that. And, we moved to Brookline in 1977. I've been on probably 3 or 4 committees about the Center Street lots already. And this is this is so much farther than we've ever gotten before. And there seems to be some momentum now to at least see what the potential is. And it's a tough environment for development right now, but we're not talking about anybody doing anything for at least a few years. Well, if we're going to go through a process of rezoning, it seems to me that now is the time to do that while we're waiting for the market to come back and for it to be more feasible to do development. But we're not asking. Again, I haven't seen what we've done yet, but my understanding is we're not asking for proposals. We're asking for questions and information of what people need in order for us to put together a zoning package and a request for proposals. Ken, does that answer your question?
Partially. I'm just not sure you're going to generate much useful information.
Well, what we can do, again, assuming the select board agrees to move forward, the committee, this document's not going to be issued until the fall. We expect it's going to take a few months to pull it together. The expectation is that EDAB members would have to do some work on that because we're the ones who may have a better idea of what the questions are than other people. And we can work on that and put together a document that we think it will be worthwhile. Again, all we're asking for now from the board is to agree to move forward with this project. Otherwise, it stops. And I can't imagine anything happening on these lots for many, many years if we don't at least gather more information now. Ken, and then Alan.
So I have several concerns, which I've outlined in email that I shared through Jessica earlier today. The first guiding project goal for this committee was to ensure continued access for business owners. And as we sit here today and Ann's proposing that EDAB endorse a request for information, that to me is not a rounding error. That is a fundamental component. And if you look at the proposed site plan for, and I know it's in schematic level, but the site plan for the side lot option, you could easily envision that 60% or so of the east lot would be taken offline for a period of 2.5 to 3 years. So that would mean a loss of 80 to 90 parking spaces on top of what's being lost along Beacon Street as part of the C-line connection. We could be well close to hitting a tipping point where it's just not worth people's while to deal with shopping and going to Coolidge Corner. So I think this is a very asymmetrical risk return unless that we follow the first guiding principle of the committee that they were given by the select board to ensure continued access for business owners. Secondly, there was no mandate for this committee to talk about Babcock Street. Babcock Street is a 60 space parking lot. That's not again, not a rounding error. That's a fundamental component of our town's transportation infrastructure. And they were given no mandate to do it. The consultant, to my knowledge, did not do any site analysis or massing studies or anything like that. So to throw that in as an add-on, as an inducement, I can tell you, I would assume that there would be a lot of residential developers who would look at that as a potential site. But it begs the question, are they going to replace those 60 spaces on site? Or would that be added to a parking garage that's built on the east lot? So those are some pretty fundamental questions. I also will tell you, just anecdotally, I've spoken to representatives of 3 organizations that are very close to the Center Street lots. And when 2 of the people thought it was a good idea to add parking, with a parking deck, and that was all they understood about this so far. And then I asked them about the issues of construction period management and other things like that. And they, of course, had different reaction to that raised concerns for their businesses. So I think this needs a lot further study, and I don't like the idea of EDAB without more collective dialogue signing off on the side lot study. That seemed to be something that was endorsed by 270 people who attended the Walkable Brookline lecture back in the fall, and it was I understand it was an enthusiastic approach or enthusiastic endorsement of that. But I don't think that is a broad enough input, and I certainly don't hear from the experts on this committee. And for example, I would have concerns about interior facing commercial space. How valuable is that? How viable is that? And that's something that I think this committee should address as well as part of that plan. So I have significant reservations. However, if the select board, in their wisdom, decide to proceed, then absolutely EDAB needs to be part of the RFI process.
Yeah. And just on your last point, I don't believe that, well, I don't believe that whatever we end up with there is going to look like the renderings we're looking at now, because number one, that doesn't usually happen. And who knows what we're going to learn. I mean, I see this process as a way to learn a whole lot more about what's out there, what the market thinks would work there. And the thing I'm concerned about is that, we're going to talk about Chestnut Hill. The town needs tax revenue. This is a way to generate, we don't know how much tax revenue because we don't know what's going to be built there, but there's going to be a net gain of tax revenue if something is built there. And again, losing an opportunity to think about it more now and have some input from the public and private nonprofit developers who might give us some input seems to me, not doing it seems to be a missed opportunity. And Meredith, I saw your hand up. Were you going to respond to stuff Ken was talking about specifically?
Yeah, I appreciate all of the concerns that Ken addressed. I think that's something that at the staff level, we're aware of those and would hope that those could be addressed in the RFI process. I think the committee has also explored similar set of concerns. And I just wanted to say, because this point also came up in the select board discussion, and I know that the Walkable City event with Jeff Beck, it was very popular, Big covered it. It was on people's radar, which is great. That's what we really wanted to do, to elevate people's awareness of this project and these community conversations. It just so happened that the audience at that meeting also selected the side lot. I don't want people to think that that was the committee's decision. That was one piece of input from a much broader, extensive community outreach engagement process that the committee balanced in their decision making. So I just wanted to reassure everyone that there was a lot more. It was very multifaceted in terms of input that the committee had to consider in recommending the side lot.
Thanks, Meredith. Alan, and then Lily.
For me, I think the fundamental piece of information from developers that we need is whether the scale of the development that is proposed is at all feasible from a development perspective. You know, if they come back and say we need a 12-story building to make this work, that changes the whole metric of, you know, how much people approve of this project or not. And so and then to George's point, I kind of worry that if we're not doing an RFP, that we're going to get not super thorough input about that very question, where it's, so I don't know. I think the RFI process is good, but I want to make sure we get good information. I do agree with Ken that the temporary parking question is super critical, as well as, you know, the operating costs and financing. And without a good package of, you know, answers that can help us address all those things, it's going to be really hard to move this forward. So I do think there's a lot of value in learning about that in the RFI process. And I hope we get the right people to respond to it. Is there any, are we just reaching out to developers for that, or who's responding to this RFI? You know,
Well, again, the committee hasn't discussed it down to that level of detail because we first need to know that we're moving forward. But I mean, I believe that the intention is to advertise this very, very broadly and get responses from as many people as we can, as many different kinds of people. I'm guessing that maybe we'd have some partnerships with, you know, a nonprofit developer and a public and a private developer. I don't know, but it's not going to be limited. We're not inviting people. We're advertising it.
okay. And I
Cambridge
guess,
got, I think, 7 or 8 responses, and I don't know how they advertised theirs.
okay, that's pretty good. And I think, you know, as an aspirational document, I'm supportive of the scheme and the approach that the process, you know, arrived at. But I do want to get these questions answered.
Yeah, that's the whole point of the request for information, is to
Yeah,
get some of
yeah.
those questions answered.
Yeah,
That's
but
exactly. And again, the document's not drafted yet. We need to work together to draft a document that gets us the information we're looking for. That's
yeah.
the point. Lily,
Yeah, I totally support sending a letter over and giving the staff the tools and being able to use the RFI process. I think, just like to shed a little bit of light, I work a lot with the RFI and RFP process in my work, and it's just, when you work in the public sector, there are very few and very guardrailed ways that you can engage in private development. And the RFI process is one of them. It kind of lets that be a little bit of a level playing field. So it kind of protects the town on that side, where it's not individuals having conversations with individual developers. It kind of, they just really post it widely. And I think it's a really worthwhile step in this. And I think, you know, whether the content at the end of the day is exactly what everybody feels one way or the other, I think this is an important step to just give the town more information. So I really think it is a worthwhile, you know, regardless of what we end up putting in it. I think at the point that we're at right now is just whether we think it's a worthwhile investment or not. And I think that if the staff wants to do it, I think it's a worthwhile piece. And I think we're at the point we're at right now, we couldn't even put out requests for proposals. Like, we have so much land that we need to cover in between there. So I think, instead of kind of getting bogged down necessarily in what's in it right now, I think it would be worthwhile for us to send a letter supporting, you know, the creation of that mechanism for staff to then bring it back, and then we can discuss what we want to put in it and what we're concerned about. But I think, just kind of for the purposes of tonight's meeting, I would support sending a letter of support, since it's tomorrow's meeting. I know we kind of have to make a decision today.
yeah, we have to make a
The
decision.
select boards, you know, whatever
Yeah.
the select board wants to do on it. But I think for us, it doesn't hurt anyone for us to do it. It's just, you know, if we want to spend the money on it.
Thanks, Lily. Paul?
Hey, thank you. I have just a kind of a process question, because if you do choose to send us a letter, I'd like to understand what's behind the letter. How have you had a full presentation and Q&A, or possibly a public hearing on this proposal? I'm concerned that I'm hearing that tonight you're deciding to maybe send us a letter. How much do you know about this? Do you understand that? I know, and you do, because you've been sitting in the committee, but how much time has this committee spent on the concept of what's being proposed? And I think about how much time you've spent on Chestnut Hill West, which is a huge amount of time. And on this, I'm asking, how much time have you really spent on it?
Well, we've had several conversations of the process of where the committee was, just as we've had regular updates on the comp plan and stuff.
Yeah.
And I believe somebody help me, because I've been to so many of these, I can't remember which was where. But Meredith, or Jessica, we've had some discussions about the various proposals on EDAB, right? I don't remember how many.
So have you benefited from the presentation at the select board with Spec Dempsey and other, staff present to present to you the full proposal, what they're thinking, how they got there? Have you had that? And I'm seriously, this is an important question to ask.
So I mean, as Anna said, the EDAB has received regular updates on the Center Street lot process.
The process is not the outcome.
The incremental, so board members, do you feel adequately informed about the menu of options that the committee was considering?
Can I ask a question, or interject here? Right. So Paul, it's a great question, right? We have talked about the Center Street lots, but I guess what I would say back is, does the select board want input from EDAB before going down to the next step? And if it does, hang on, then we should have enough time to maybe get a more complete presentation, right? I had the benefit of chatting with Anne a little bit about what this RFI process is, which is not as significant, I'll call it, as an RFEI, like a request for expressions of interest, or even, and it's a far cry from an RFP. It's really trying to get more information. But I think, as I'm hearing this, right, I'm sitting here saying, this feels very much like something EDAB should be opining on, right? And that the select board, in my opinion, right, I'm biased, should be asking for EDAB's opinion before figuring out what that next step is. So if that's the case, right, then we should have enough time to get maybe more fully updated. We have had updates on the process and have generally, I think the last one might have been 2 months ago. So if it's advanced since then and we haven't gotten the kind of final outcome of this phase, and that's what's driving the update, I feel like we should have enough time to do that then, or be given the time before the select board makes a decision that maybe is more difficult to undo.
Yes. So Sandy, thank you. And first, you should know, I am the liaison to the select board, but I do not speak for the select board, so I can only speak for myself. I think you expressed an interesting idea that, the select board appoints committees like the Center Street Lot Study Committee, or supporting the Chestnut Hill West staff-led committee. We also appoint you guys. We appoint the Transportation Board. We appoint the Planning Board, and folks that deal with senior issues. This project, in my view, it has great potential. Let me say the space has great potential. I don't know if this project in particular has great potential. It may, but the space has tremendous potential and benefit to the town. And as I hear the many voices on this committee that I have deep respect for, you guys have really impressed me with how much you know in your domain areas. I think it's important that the select board continue to embrace to hear from its committees on major topics that would impact the town, especially if the select board is being asked to make a critical decision about that. So for me personally, I would want you to be fully briefed. I wouldn't want it to be done. This is just me, okay? Not the board speaking, Paul Warren, individually, that I'd want you to be fully educated on the what, where, why, and how, so that you could make an informed recommendation back to the board with, risk and benefit analysis. That, for me personally, I would benefit as a select board member to hear from you on that. And if you came with just me speaking for myself, I don't know if you're prepared to do that tonight. I don't think you've been fully briefed. That's my.
But just to respond to Sandy's question, it hasn't changed at all since, I think, November. The contract, I mean, the consultant's contract actually ended at the end of the year. And what I don't recall, as I've said, I've been to a whole bunch of presentations on this. Meredith, do you have a?
I just had a clarification question. And so Paul, is in terms of, asking for EDAB to opine on this, are we asking, would the select board want to hear from EDAB about sort of the Center Street Lot Committee's conclusion about the side lot, or is it about the value of proceeding at this point with an RFI?
Good question.
That's a great question. I can't answer that for this committee. I think this individual committee members have raised different types of issues, right? I heard George raise issues about the quality of information we may get from an RFI, because how committed is the town to doing this project? Right? I mean, we're going to send a signal to the market that we're going to do something, then we might say, "Oh, forget it. That doesn't make sense." That we just burn some credibility. I'm not a developer, but I assume that you burn some credibility when you do things like that. I've heard Ken's concerns. Ken did send a letter to the select board raising many of the concerns that I think he raised here this evening. I don't think this body is the only one that should opine on. I spoke to the chair of the transportation board this morning. He had some very serious thoughts about the matter. And I said, has your board been briefed? Have you heard from the committee? Have you voted? Have you provided your feedback and opinion back to the select board? And he said, no. So that's what he said, Meredith. I don't know if that's true, but
the T-board was briefed at their December meeting.
But they haven't taken a vote of the way that in a letter to the board. So again, all I'm saying is I'm speaking on my own behalf, right? As a transparent select board member to you. I think it's incumbent upon the select board to reach out to the bodies that it appoints for expertise and advice. I don't know all of them that would be involved in this. Certainly, you should opine on this and give us your best information and opinions. I know I value that, and I know the board does. I think the transportation board should do that. I think there's probably another 2 boards that potentially we may want to hear from before we take the important critical step to going out to the market and saying, okay, we're serious. We've thought this through. This is the direction that we'd like to go in, development community. Give us your feedback. Again, this is Paul Warren speaking individually, not for the board. So,
I appreciate that. Ken.
Yeah, I just want to emphasize that this recommendation comes with it the stamp of approval on the side lot option as a guideline. And we as a board have never hashed out the specifics of some of those basic assumptions. They're talking about 180 to 110 dwelling units spread out in 3 different buildings or 4 different buildings. And is that feasible? Sandy Silk is a mixed use developer. I'd like to hear what she has to say. I'd like to hear what others have to say about having interior oriented commercial space. Is that even something that it's being proposed and being cited as a form of expansion of the commercial tax base, which is good. But I would question whether in this development market, interior space that has no visibility on Harvard or Beacon, is that going to really command the rents that would be necessary to support new construction? And then we have the whole issue about ratios for parking and what developers might ask. So the idea, to me, the idea of us I would not be willing to endorse the side lot plan without certainly further discussion among this board.
I don't think that the request for information necessarily, I mean, it can, I'm not sure that it does endorse a specific plan. I don't know that it hasn't been drafted yet, but it
The list
doesn't,
of questions that was just posted said the side lot plan is
it's
a
the preferred.
model.
Yeah,
So,
it's a model, but people would see all the other things that were studied. And again, I don't think anybody on this committee and all the discussions we've had expects that anything that comes back in a proposal, assuming we get that far, is going to look anything like the renderings that we have on paper at the moment. It just, everybody knows it doesn't work that way. So all the questions you're raising are very important ones, but I don't know how we answer those before going through the request for information. Anybody else? So it's not clear to me what people want to do. Should I make a motion maybe that we send a letter to the select board endorsing that they move forward on that they agree to move forward with requests for information, and it wouldn't go out until we and a whole lot of other committees, including the select board, had a lot of input into it. I mean, this is the beginning of a long process. Sandy.
So I'm kind of feeling, Ann, that maybe the letter that we send to or should send to the select board is we understand that they have a vote on their agenda to, and I don't know exactly what the vote is, right? But that they have an item on their agenda to discuss the Center Street lots, and that we have real thoughts that we would like to further and haven't had adequate time to really dive in so that we could advance those. Because as I'm sitting here, like the RFI process could address Ken's comments around traffic and say that one of the key things before the town can move forward is there needs to be a dedicated construction traffic plan that is thought about ahead of time, right? I just pick on that as an example. It's a real valid concern. But then the developer in me also says, if you only develop things where you can manage all of the traffic issues, nothing would ever get built, right? So you have to balance those things out, but we need to elevate them and have those things rise up as real concerns to be addressed. And this process could be that, but to Paul's, I think Paul makes a really valid point. And this kind of feels like it just, came a little bit out of nowhere all of a sudden that we needed to react to it. We didn't know that the select board was moving, to act quickly. And if we did, maybe we missed it. So I'm not certain there. But I think that's the letter, right, that we should send to so I guess I'd like to propose that we send a letter to the select board saying, we had a conversation around the Center Street lots. We have a lot of thoughts, but we don't feel like we have quite enough information to give the guidance that we would like to give, and in the form of a recommendation to the select board around a next step, and that we would ask that they table any vote on a next step until we, for a month or so, until we have a meeting and could actually dive in, do what we should do. That's my 2 cents.
Okay, Lily?
Yeah, I'm just curious to hear a little bit more from Meredith about timeline involved in any of this. Because I think that's another piece. Obviously, like these projects are large, they're not happening tomorrow. But I think to Ann's point, there's also this piece of momentum right now that if people are excited about, moving these projects forward and getting more information, I would hate for us to just like let more and more studies get, just put on a shelf somewhere. So I'm kind of just curious, Meredith, like, if you could speak a little bit to, if we ask them to table the vote versus that, like are there any timelines that you're trying to hit right now? That would be really helpful to hear.
Yeah, thank you for the question, Lily. I think the point about momentum is a good one. In that I do think there is momentum and to capitalize on. In terms of I mean, it sounds like, based on Paul's comments, and sort of feedback we're getting from EDEB, like there's an interest in having more discussion about the recommendations and maybe a clear understanding about the side lot option. I think what would be helpful for me is to understand, Ken and George, like, what do you see as the next steps? And, what information would you need to get to a point where you think an RFI makes sense? And then from a timeline perspective, I think, as Ann pointed out at the beginning of this discussion, I was very skeptical that we would get to the end of the Center Street lot study process and have a clear consensus. So I think, just given the track record about discussions regarding the Center Street lot, it's been a real third rail in public discussions about this. So I think, just having consensus and a clear recommendation from a committee, and then sort of based on high quality and a lot of community input, that's a really big accomplishment. And, if it seems like there's the need for more internal discussion around boards and committees, then, we should pursue that, because I think at the same time, we don't want to undermine all of the progress that has been made by the Center Street Lot Study Committee.
And can I ask a really quick follow-up on that?
Yeah.
Just as a budgeting question, are we done with whatever budget we had already used with Spec Dempsey, or, are you going to have to procure out separately for whoever would do the RFI? Or are you looking to like amend your Spec Dempsey contract? I'm just wondering if any of that comes into this.
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think if we were going to proceed with an RFI for this fiscal year, because we've been down 2 staff people since October, and are waiting for developments in terms of the override vote, in terms of hiring back those positions, and the select board, we've transferred a portion of the salary to our technical consulting services. We would have the resources available this fiscal year in order to move that RFI process forward. We wouldn't amend the scope of our work with Spec Dempsey. That was with ARPA funds, but the RFI was sort of discrete and very different from that. And even the questions about like bringing Spec Dempsey back for another round of presentations, we just have to figure out how we would make that work, given that our scope of work with them has concluded as of last calendar year. So.
Great. And I think just for the committee, something to remember is that this is kind of a weird year just because there's not staff. So it's odd that Meredith would have a bunch of extra money right now for technical work. So that might be also another thought just around timeline and momentum here.
Sandy, is your hand up again, or? Oh, okay, Derek.
Great. So I think there were a couple of questions in my head that were answered. One is, we do have the resources to further vet, some of the fundamental questions that we have with this study. So I feel a lot more comfortable, and I do want to second Sandy's motion to have more time to contemplate this concept. And I don't think this is going to take away from momentum. I think what this is going to do is it's going to give us credibility to actually have the time. Having been burnt significantly in multiple developer initiatives, I think this is really good for us to take stock of enthusiasm that will be vetted by thoughtful analysis, because I think there remains more questions than answers. That with the allocation that we have now, this is a rare situation where we actually have the funds to provide enough technical assistance to advance this analysis. I don't think we're ready for an RFI. I think we really need to sort of nurture the enthusiasm, the momentum with good analysis. So I think this is actually a really kind of unique situation that we found ourselves in. So anyway, I will yield my time to Tom, who has also raised his hands.
You didn't have a time limit.
I
Just for the
understand.
record. Been watching too much congressional stuff.
In that case, I will be brief. And I agree with the point that Sandy made. I think we know something, but we kind of don't know what we don't know. And I think we need to spend a little bit more time thinking about how we want to craft a letter to the select board. And what Paul would like to see in terms of the homework that we do. And I think it's good to proceed with where we are today. However, there are a number of questions, and I think we want to make sure that any request for information finds a way to highlight those questions, the questions that Ken raised and the questions that George raised. I don't think this is going to be a huge effort on the part of developers to come up with, whatever they come up with in terms of response. But I think there are still questions, and if we can be a little bit more educated, I think we can focus on making intelligent suggestions to the select board as to what we think ought to be included in the RFI.
Okay, so if we, Derek, your hand's up again. You're muted.
Just one last note to take advantage
Yeah.
of the remaining time that I want to reclaim. Maybe I'm missing a few things here. I don't think there is an urgency in the market right now. And so I do think that time is to our advantage. So unless I'm missing something, I do think that we have time to be prudent in really kind of vetting, some of these concepts. And I don't think there's any developer out there that's just screaming to run with this. So, I don't think we're going to be losing the enthusiasm factor, but I think we can come out with an RFI, with more analysis and thought at this point. Unless I'm missing something, I don't think the market's screaming at us.
No, the
Go ahead.
market certainly isn't. Go on, Meredith, and then Jessica.
Sorry, again, just looking for clarification. So I think the intention was that we would move forward with the RFI process, commit to a certain scope of work with the consultant to develop that, and then that process would begin spring, summer, wouldn't finalize that until the fall. And I think the intention was that we were always going to have a good amount of engagement with EDAB in terms of the substance of that RFI and having a clear understanding of what questions really want answered with that process. So I'm confused about, we were always thinking EDAB was going to be involved in the RFI. Are we going to continue to have a discussion about whether you like the side lot or whether you think you want to move forward with an RFI?
Well, that's a good
I think
question.
that's what I was trying to ask as well, because I think we're kind of talking about two separate things right now. I think we're talking about like, do we want staff to move forward with this mechanism to then be able to take the vote to get permission to say we're going to move forward with an RFI so that they can then bring the consultant on who will then draft it and bring it to us. And then we will review it for the next couple of months before it goes out. That was my understanding of what you were asking for. But if that's different than what's going on right now, Meredith, I think it would be helpful.
No, that was sort of next steps.
Yeah, I don't think we're talking about content at all right now. I think we're talking about mechanism. And so I think that's where we're kind of getting a little bit of a mishmash.
I was going to ask, because what it sounds like some people are talking about is, I mean, are we talking about reviewing the results? I mean, this committee's been working for a year and a half, something like that, and went through this process and came up with this idea, suggestion. It's a vision. It was called the visioning exercise of what could happen in the Center Street lots. Are we talking about reviewing that and critiquing it, or are we talking about the process that Lily was talking about? Ken?
So just to be clear, the committee's recommendation to the select board is that they endorse the side lot proposal and move forward with an RFI, and that they include the Babcock Street lots in the RFI. So there are three elements to that. So it's not just what if EDAB is being asked to do the same thing, which is what I understood Anne prefacing these remarks with, is that we are signing off on the side lot option as a structure to inform developers as to general expectations as to what the town is looking for, and that it includes the Babcock Street lots. And then there would be certain specific information that would be asked of the developers, so that these things are married in the way that it's been structured. And you saw Mike's list of initial questions in his initial draft. He actually mentions Babcock Street lots. He mentions the side lot proposal. So divorcing those two isn't what's being proposed. Those are two interlinked things. And that's what I was saying, that, you know, if EDAB's that's a substantive proposal. And that's where I'd like to hear from, you know, Mark and George and Sandy and Derek and everybody who's been involved with designing and building projects, to take advantage of some of our collective expertise.
Anybody want to comment? Paul?
And I'll just add one more to try to clarify this, because I know maybe Lily articulated that you got two things going on. You've got process, which is RFI, and then you've got concept, which is side lot, right? I don't want you to advise us. I don't need advice on the process, right? I mean, you probably have some input into that, and you could ask better questions as part of the RFI. But what I really want to hear from EDAB is the side lot a good idea? Is this the right thing to do in the center of our economic vitality, which is Coolidge Corner? Is this the right concept that we want to go to the market with to give us information back on? That's personally what I'm looking for as a select board member. I understand writing RFIs. I came from that world. I could write RFIs and RFPs so the cows come home. But what I don't have is, I don't have Derek's expertise. I don't have Ken's expertise, and I don't have your expertise, right? I've listened to you address Chestnut Hill West. You know, that committee came with a recommendation. You chewed it up. You reformed it, right? Dramatically, because you didn't think the proposal that was being put forward was in the best interest of the town. I want you to do the same thing with the side lot. You may conclude that the side lot's the best thing and that's what we should go forward with, but I want to benefit as a member of the select board, me personally, I'm not speaking for the board, from your thoughtful consideration on this subject. And, you know, Derek was really helpful. I think you said something that's really helpful to me. Time is on our side here, right? Time is on our side. There's no reason to rush. This is so critical to us. I appreciate that it took a year and a half, a year for the committee that the select board appointed to gather input and come up with the proposal. I think it's okay to spend a little more time to beat it up and check it with EDAB and the Transportation Board and maybe the Planning Board and maybe the HAB, committees that the select board really relies on for their perspective. That, again, that's my personal view as a member of the select board, and I'm not speaking for the board.
Okay, thanks, Paul. The one issue I see in that is how we're gonna, I mean, Meredith does have some funds that she can spend now, as she said. But that's gonna be the constraint, I think, is figuring out how to get that work done, because what we're talking about is a significant amount of work, I think. I don't know what it would cost, but Lily.
Yeah, so I think if that's what you're looking for, Paul, I don't think that we've had that meeting. We haven't discussed the Babcock lot, that section of it. I feel like our group has actually done quite a lot of conversation about the Center Street lot. We did a lot of that this fall, but I think that specific issue wasn't a big part. So if that's what you want us to really dig into, I don't know that we'll reach consensus as a committee on that, because I think we've got some very differing views on one way or the other on it. But I think if that's kind of the piece that you're looking for, I think might be worthwhile. But I don't see that as impeding the RFI.
Yeah. So Lily, just to be really clear, right, that's my opinion, not the board's. The board tomorrow might have a completely different opinion, tell me to go pound sand, but that's my view at this point.
Yeah, but I think it's helpful to hear that, you know, if that's one of the places that we can be helpful. I think to the point that has been brought up, I think that specific point we haven't really hashed out.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't think we're challenging process, right? There's still a lot of known unknowns that we've articulated
Yeah.
in multiple discussions that, warrant the technical analysis and it warrants, an additional review. The process is what it is. I think to Paul's point, it is how you engage the market. But if you engage the market without the credibility, without the analysis, without a few questions that we still need to vet, everything from phasing to temporary capacity, all the issues that we know, the devil's in the detail, it could come back to really haunt us, because we rushed through something that we felt like we would be losing political capital and intrigue and enthusiasm, which I don't think there's going to be any loss of it. I think we're going to come out of the process with credibility and just a lot of clarity as we come back to the market with a little bit more of a revision, or at least, a few questions that we haven't fully vetted and gone through. So I think we just need that process right now to really go through it and have that conversation that Lily was talking about.
Okay. We have another significant conversation we need to have. So I guess Meredith, go on.
Just a quick clarification. So based on Derek and sort of his vision for next steps in the discussion about additional technical analysis, is this the type of work that EDAB would want to undertake sort of in the subcommittee format style that we've used for Chestnut Hill? Or is this something where with fundings available, staff should look to bring on some additional consulting capacity to help expedite some of that?
Great question. They're probably smarter people who know how to leverage our existing contractual arrangements here. But
maybe Ken, did you have a sense of how you wanted to move forward with giving some additional thought to the Center Street Lot Study Committee recommendations?
Well, I have a bunch of questions that I think need to be answered to further inform the expectations that we provide to developers. So that's some of that is technical with regard to cost analysis. Other questions would be relative to managing logistics. So yeah, I think I just think having somebody that's got some expertise in building and managing and maintaining parking structures, that's also a big piece of what's being proposed here, because not only is the committee's recommendation that the town should be mindful of the cost, so there's an expectation in the committee's report that the town would own and manage this. They further went to the recommendation that there should be a sinking fund established to cover the long-term costs of that. I think with people's awareness more of the alewife situation for the MBTA in Cambridge and how that's become a real challenge for redevelopment there. So there's a lot of these questions that are being raised. I don't know which consultant would be best to do that. I do think there's a lot of expertise on our board where if they're given specific questions to address, they could help inform that as well.
Thank you.
So I'm getting not confused, but what we're talking about is doing a whole lot more work before we go out and ask the rest of the world what kind of work they would like to have us do before we move forward. Is essentially what the request for information would ask. What kind of work they would like us to do and what kinds of concerns they have about doing anything there.
And do you feel like you have enough endorsement from the all the precincts and town meeting members that they're behind this kind of proposal?
No, haven't even discussed it, Ken.
Okay.
Again, I appreciate the conversation we've had. This has been really helpful, but what the committee was talking about doing was using this as a way to gather all the kinds of information that we're talking about. Not that, I mean, the side lots is the proposal that the committee ended up with, but again, everybody always said during the conversations that that's not what it's going to look like. It's going to be different. We need to understand more from the development world, what's going to be different about it. So what I'm having difficulty figuring out, going back to process, is if we spend time investigating all this stuff now, we need people to do it. We need money to do it. I don't disagree with anything anybody's saying, but I thought that that's what we were going to be starting to do with this request for information process. Jessica, let me start with you and then Alan.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I appreciate everyone's feedback, and I wanted to just kind of reiterate what Ann was saying, where throughout the process, and I joined the committee late once we lost Zach, but my understanding of the process was that really all of these conversations would really hit the ground running if we were allowed to move forward with the RFI drafting, because there really are so many questions that we don't know the answer to. When we started the process, we really thought that the Grove, which was the one that was no development, just ADA compliance and some trees, which would actually cost a couple of spots, would be the primary option that people would enjoy. I think with the side lot, with all the conversations that I've had with Transportation Board, Select Board, and here, it seems like everyone's really focused on the specifics of the concept. And yes, that should be of concern. However, I think a lot of what they're trying to get across with the conceptual design isn't so much that that's exactly what it's going to look like, but so much that we'd have the open space with the plaza. We would have the same parking ability and increasing based off of the number of housing units, if that were to come to be, having the added housing capacity at market and or affordable rates. The committee really wants to push for a mix of both. The Babcock Streets came into play because of the housing production plan, both the most recent one and the one prior, which really calls for that as potentially being a site of interest for some housing development. It was a last minute entry in terms of adding it to the recommendation just because of its location, in terms of being able to potentially add some just a little bit icing to the cake for the developers looking at it, to be able to add some more housing units. Maybe 80 to 100 is not a lot for them, but if you add a whole nother location to the mix, they might be a little bit more interested. Everything you guys have said has been super useful. I've been taking notes like crazy, but I just really want to understand whether you guys think that just allowing the select board to let us move to the next phase, where we could really maybe bump out the roadmap timeline for the implementation to really add more of this discussion into the mix. When we did the T-board update in December, the process was just to let them know what we were planning on doing, letting them know what we were looking at, given that they run and operate all of the public lots across town. So I think we were really imagining that a lot more of these in-depth conversations, so what do we include, what don't we include, would come during the implementation phase, given that both myself and the committee members were more a mix of folks from all a broad range of different I can't think of my words, expertise areas. So you had the academics, you had the developers, you had just people that were really interested in being part of the process. So I think that this next phase is where we were really considering all of the real expertise in the development side from you guys, from planning, from the planning board, from transportation board. All of that would come as a next phase of the cycle. And yes, maybe we worded it in a more nuanced way with saying the side lot concept and those things, but that's just, I could very well be wrong, but I just wanted to kind of elaborate from what I'm hearing, what I'm seeing, what I was thinking as someone that joined the process a little later in the game, helping staff the committee. So taking your feedback and making plenty of notes, just looking to get some more feedback as we go into the select board meeting tomorrow.
Thanks, Jess. Alan?
It seems like the RFI and endorsing a scheme are two separate
Yeah,
things.
exactly.
And the RFI is a vehicle to get the information that everybody's saying that we need. So I don't even understand why we have to do both those things. Like, why can't we say, we did a study, here were the results, we came up with these 4 preliminary schemes, you know, some people like one of them, some like the other, and that doesn't matter right now. What matters are getting the answers to all these other background questions that everybody has brought up in this meeting. And I can totally get behind that right now, but it seems like we don't even need to endorse a scheme right now. So that's my 2 cents. And I
think,
totally endorse the RFI, but you know, but I think it could be more general, maybe.
well, it's not written yet, so it can be anything we want it to be.
Mhm.
So I'm not sure where that leaves us. Sandy had a suggestion that we basically ask the select board to wait for a few weeks. That means that we would need to have a meeting sometime before our next meeting. Later in the month, it's vacation week. I don't know how many people are impacted by that, but I'm just trying to figure out how we accomplish what people want to do. Or what I think I'm hearing people want to do. I mean, I agree with what Alan just said. Paul,
Can I offer a suggestion?
yes,
Now remember,
love
this
it.
is me speaking, not the board.
I understand.
So, and I'm going to keep emphasizing that because I don't want to think that otherwise.
Yeah.
Frankly, I would probably tomorrow night offer a tabling motion until we hear back from EDAB, until we hear back from the Transportation Board, until I don't know there may be other select board members that say, I really want to hear from X. I don't necessarily think you need to go hire a bunch of consultants, but you haven't even benefited from the full presentation yet. I don't know how you can say go forward with an RFI. Again, it doesn't. And if you say that to me, I'm going to go, I already know the cat's out of the bag. You never got a presentation and got to ask questions. So I want you to benefit from the presentation that I benefited from and that others have benefited from. And I think that's important. For me as a select board member individually, I would really benefit from you coming back and saying, this is what the proposal is. This is what we understand. Here's what the risks, we have a bunch of questions. We think these are risks. We think these are benefits. And at least I'd benefit from that. Even this conversation that you've had tonight, Bernard and John and Michael, and they haven't benefited from it. It's been hugely helpful just for me to listen to you. If you could capture that discussion and put it in a report, even if it wasn't a conclusive report, it would be helpful to the board, I think, in making a decision about how to proceed with this thing. That's all I'm asking.
Can I ask you a question then, just
Yes.
based on what you just said?
Yep.
Since we're going, it's not clear to me what kind of letter we send to the select board and what we're asking them to do. If you're willing to table it, is that the right word? Is that what you just said? Wait for more input, then we don't have to write a letter and we can figure out
well, first of all, Paul's representing what you said is different than you sending a letter saying we'd like some time to be able to get the benefit of the presentation, and so that we can have a discussion about the recommendation for the side lot and how to proceed, so that we can give you feedback. Now I can say that if that's what you want me to communicate to the select board on your behalf, tell me and I will do that. It might be better if it comes from you in the form of a letter. It's up to you.
All right. Just based on this conversation, I'm not sure what the letter says that represents everybody, but that's, is there, I guess we need a vote. First, we need a motion and then we need a vote. And then we really have to start talking about Chestnut Hill because that was supposed to be the long conversation tonight. does somebody have a motion for, it's going to be a short letter because we need to get it in tomorrow and everybody has other things happening tomorrow.
Can we move to send a letter to the select board asking for additional time to review the presentation before asking for them to table the vote, whatever vote they're taking tomorrow, in order to allow EDAB more time to receive the full presentation? I think that's the most neutral based on what everyone has landed on, but I don't.
That sounds like a motion. Somebody want to second it?
I second the motion.
Okay.
Jessica, just make it sound nicer in the notes.
Marilyn,
Yes.
Derek,
Yes.
George,
Yes.
Tom,
Yes.
Alan,
Yes.
Ken,
Yes.
Sandy,
Yes.
Lily,
Yes.
and I vote yes. Okay, so we just need to get a letter together first thing in the morning. Thank
That
you,
was
everybody.
easy.
This is what?
That was easy.
I'm also sending them a tweet. Like, we can get it real short.
It was a really good discussion. Thank you. And hopefully, well, we'll see what happens tomorrow night, but Chestnut Hill.
Thank you. So the discussion last week was incredibly helpful, and I did get a couple follow-up emails of people just having the benefit of gathering their thoughts and giving some good feedback about, as we move forward towards the warrant article process, here's going to be the most effective way to present that information. So I greatly appreciate that. The timing was also really helpful. We're preparing our presentation to the select board tomorrow. We're going to be presenting the study recommendations regarding the Chestnut Hill commercial area, including info about the zoning and the design guidelines. All of that was included in the select board packet. So having the benefit of our discussion last week was really helpful in preparing that. And I still think the select board presentation is a lot, that's not the sell piece that people were talking about earlier. That's going to be important for us to work on moving forward. It's still kind of a technical, more policy oriented, but I think that's appropriate given the audience. So we're going to be presenting recommendations tomorrow, and then probably going back to the select board over the next couple of weeks, and are looking for direction on how to move forward with the warrant article package related to the rezoning. So I will keep you updated at the next meeting in March. And the warrant article filing deadline is February 25th, and I don't think the next select board meeting is until March 10th, which will have some implications for our rescheduled March EDAB meeting. So we will need to figure that out. That is the update.
I think just in terms of the scheduling, we all have March 5th on our calendars. I think we should leave it and use that as a Center Street Lots meeting, because we're probably not going to be able to meet earlier than that. Does that make sense? And then we'd have to schedule another one later in March for Chestnut Hill. Does that make sense, Meredith? Or
it depends on, so if the warrant is executed on March 12th, do you want EDAB to, where do you want EDAB's vote to be in sort of the sequence of different warrant article recommendations and people taking positions on the zoning? And so if you want to be one of the first, we should have a meeting shortly after the
well, somebody needs to volunteer to, that's fine. Neither Sandy nor I will be here that week, the week of the 9th and 12th.
Right.
So if somebody else wants to chair the meeting, that's fine.
What's the window to have the meeting? Right, like what's our time frame?
Well, the question is whether we want to be one of the first boards to hear it and support it. We don't have to do it until the end of the month or in April, but I mean, town meeting's not till May, but that was the original intent when we thought the select board was meeting on the 3rd, was to meet on the 5th and kind of be the first ones in. Whether that's important to everybody is a question. But that was the rationale. So if somebody else wants to chair a meeting, that's okay. If not, we should wait. I won't be back until the end of the month. Sandy, you're just gone for the week, right?
Yeah, I'll be back on the 14th, the night of the 14th. George has his hand up. George, are you
George.
offering?
No, I'm not, but but I really, since Chestnut Hill's been such a primary focus of this group and is really important to the town immediately, I would devote the March 5th meeting to the Center Street lots and the warrant article. And if we have time and the endurance, go into the Center Street lots, which can really lay fallow for a while. But Chestnut Hill is too important to, I
But
think, defer.
The issue is that the select board will not have approved the warrant by before the 5th. We originally thought they were meeting on the 3rd, but now they're not meeting till the week after that.
But we can endorse it regardless, right?
Yeah, we talked about that at the last meeting. Meredith, were you gonna?
I think it's a little sketchy only because with the warrant articles, there was the requirement for the public hearing. So EDAB could certainly have a discussion about like, we've seen the draft and, we endorse this, but I think you'd have to have another more formal public hearing. And then I don't know to what extent like the advisory subcommittees would be able to reference any votes or what it's like a legal gray area. I think we talked about this last time and Paul might advise that we wait until the warrant's executed. I don't want to misquote you, Paul, but.
Did I give some advice? What advice did I give? Sorry, I was distracted.
About whether EDAB should wait until the warrant is officially executed before taking any vote on the Chestnut Hill rezoning proposal.
Yeah, again, this is just my opinion. You may want to check with town council, but I think you want to be voting on something that the public has seen. Are you going to hold a public hearing and then vote? Yeah, then I think you need to wait till the warrant's published.
Yeah,
And
so that's what the issue is, George.
Okay. I
So
did not understand that.
is March 16th too late for the warrant discussion? And I guess the comment there is that the Center Street lots, I mean, to Derek's point, there's not really a rush, right? I mean, there is the idea of forward momentum and keeping it going, but putting it out for a few more weeks is not going to mean that it doesn't happen, and that we're missing a window here for development.
Well, the only question I have is that assuming that we're going to need to do some work, no matter what we do, that is going to cost us some money with consultants. What Meredith described was having money till the end of this fiscal year. Is that right? And not necessarily after that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a constraint.
And the fiscal year ends when? July, like June 30th?
July 1. Yeah. So
Thank you for the reminder.
That's what the issue is. But if people don't, want to meet twice in March, we should. I mean, I completely agree with what George said about Chestnut Hill. But we just need to be aware that we may not get very far with the Center Street lots without some money to fund it. Ken.
Meredith, you sent out a memo about a meeting with the Citizens Advisory Group. That was also on the 2nd, correct?
Yes, so that was assuming that we'd officially moved the March 2nd meeting. For EDAB.
So EDAB wouldn't meet on March 2nd then?
We had already moved it to March 5th on the assumption that the select board was approving the warrant on the 3rd.
And now it's going to be moved to the 16th?
Well, do we do the 2nd? I'm sorry for just jumping in here, but maybe we go back to the 2nd and we use the 2nd for Center Street lots and then have the 16th be the warrant article in Chestnut Hill, because that is the main thing.
Another meeting for the 2nd, is that right?
I did. I think it would be really helpful if there was a lot of good feedback. We're gonna have the conversation with the select board tomorrow, so maybe we could, staff could just kind of think through the logistics and the funding availability and maybe come back with some recommendations about, you know, maybe this is something that we wait until April to circle back to.
Center Street, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. That's fine.
We meeting on the 16th then? Because I'm not around on the 5th, but I didn't realize that had changed. But anyways, that's just me. But so
Is the
but
16th good for people? Is the 16th not good for anybody? Let me ask
Works
that.
for me.
I won't be here, but that's fine.
I will try to be here, but I'll be out of state in a different time zone, so.
Is okay with everybody else? All right, let's do that. If you can get a memo out, Jessica, asking, you know, the people who aren't here, let's make sure we have a quorum for the 16th, but let's do that. Okay. Is there anything else? We still have some time. My goodness. I thought we were going to run way over. You got everything you needed from us in terms of direction, Meredith and Jessica?
Yes, thank you
Okay.
very much. It was a great discussion.
Okay. Just in terms of activity in Coolidge Corner, I saw today there's the general store is moving to the space where the gallery was. They have a sign up there, have a 40% off everything sale right now, by the
Right.
way, if anybody wants to go shopping, but I think that sign just went up today. They're gonna move this spring. It's a bigger space. I assume that's why they're moving. But that was good that apparently they're doing well enough to do that.
Any
Okay.
takers for their space?
What?
Are there any takers for their space?
The general store, I have no idea. I don't know. I mean, I didn't, the sign just went up today as far as I
Yeah.
know. Sergio, do you know something?
I just wanted to mention to the committee that it's my understanding that if Meredith has funds in her budget currently, and she enters into a contract prior to the end of this fiscal year, the work can continue during FY '27, and the funds are not lost.
Sergio, I was just responding to your comment. I think you're right. I get mixed messages about this in terms of expectations around like when the majority of the work would need to be completed if you're going to be dividing it between fiscal years. But I hope your interpretation is the correct one, because I think that would work much better in terms of kind of where we landed in terms of tonight's discussion, and a timeline that people feel more comfortable moving forward on. So I will definitely follow up on that.
Thanks, Sergio. Okay. Thank you, everybody. This has been a good discussion. We'll see what happens.
Thank you. Good night.
Thanks, Paul. Bye.
Good night.
Thank you.